We have about 1 more minute. I'm going to make this announcement again, so sorry if some of you have heard it 3 times now. If you were in a session called Data Leaders on Tuesday, you have already been exposed to this content. So if you would rather take this time to see another session, I will not be offended, but I did want to give you a heads up before we got started. All right. It's new for everyone. That's exciting. I got a thumbs up from the back of the room. All right. Okay, so I'm going to make another announcement before we officially start. Okay, so hi everyone, my name is Ashley Howard Neville. I am a senior technology evangelist at Tableau. And that's a really fancy way of saying that I know Tableau's technology really well, and I get to go out and talk with people about that technology. And one of the things that we've been talking a lot about internally at Tableau is it is becoming more and more apparent to us that we need to start talking with customers in a broader sense about more than just technology, and more than just how they deploy that technology in their business, but actually how they start embracing change within their business. You can find me on Twitter at DataAshley. Would love to continue this conversation on Twitter after this session. The session was originally titled Critical Behaviors of Data-Driven Organizations, and we've since been sort of renaming it and calling it Leading to Data Culture, because data culture is so critical for our organizations. Yesterday, Adam shared the story of Code Girls and the role that culture plays in shaping an organization's success. That's what we're going to talk about today. We're going to dig in a lot deeper and discuss how critical it is to be more data-driven and how hard it is to change. In college, I was a rower. I went to Georgetown and studied economics and was on the crew team. And I worked out almost every day. I was in a group that was sort of driven to common goals together. And then I left college and joined the workforce. I joined a very competitive company where everyone was always trying to get ahead. And slowly my workouts slowed down. I took a conference call instead of running at lunch. And pretty soon I wasn't exercising nearly as much as I had before, and I actually put on a bunch of weight. And then I came to Tableau almost 7 years ago now. And Tableau has a different culture. Tableau thinks that it needs to do things to put their people at their best. It invests in technology that allow employees to work from wherever they're at. And they understand that sometimes you work your best at times that are not 9 to 5. And in that environment, I started running again. And I joined a group of other Tableau employees, and we started running relay races together. And this was really encouraged. It was encouraged to support one another, and it was supported to have sort of fun while we were doing it. And I tell you this because I was the same person at Georgetown and at my first job and at Tableau. But the environment I was in brought out a different part of me. And our cultures and our organizations are very similar in that regard. If you reflect on your own career, you might see how, although you're the same person and you've probably grown over time, there are aspects of the work environment around you that bring out different characteristics in you. And that's what we're talking about when we talk about culture. Well, when I talk to customers, and I go out and I travel and I talk with a lot of our customers, what I hear is that they recognize the importance of their organization being data-driven, but everyone worries about their competitors, and competitors doing a better job than them. And they worry about their entire industry being disrupted. And so in this data era, the organizations that can be most data-driven will be the ones that thrive. In fact, the research shows this. Data is arguably the most valuable resource shaping the world today, and companies that are more insight-driven and data-capable see better business outcomes. Forrester predicts 7% faster than global GDP growth for organizations that are data-driven. And McKinsey sees much better performance in new customer acquisition and in customer loyalty for organizations that perform better with data. And yet, the truth is that 92% of organizations, nearly every organization, is struggling to become more data-driven. There was a really great study by McKinsey. Adam actually referenced it yesterday. What I love about this study is they didn't just come out and ask, are you data-driven? What they did was they asked the 1,000 companies with over $1 billion in revenue across 13 sectors and 12 geographies, so really broad. They asked them a series of questions about their business and how they were using data. And then McKinsey brought their expertise to the table and made a judgment about how that organization was performing with data. And that's how they got to this number of 92%. And really, only 8% were distinguishing themselves. And I think that's because, and I know that's because being data-driven requires more than just deploying some technology. And it requires more than just deploying Tableau, even as great of a technology it is, and even with all the investments we're making in it. Organizations need to do more than buying software. So we really wanted to understand this better at Tableau. And so we did what data-driven organizations do, and we went and got the data. We talked with industry analysts, we talked with thought leaders, we reviewed their work. And then we talked with many of you, many of the customers here at this conference. At Tableau, we're fortunate to work with some of the biggest analytics deployments in the world and companies that are notable for their use of data. What we found was that no one was doing everything right. But many of you are doing great things, and that we could learn from each other. We also just completed a research study and speaking with over 1,100 executives across 10 companies. And the results, the data just came back. We are waiting for the research firm to do their own analysis. But we took a sneak peek at the data last week. And we found some interesting insights that I'm going to talk about later in this session. But overall, what we found was that the answer lies in building a data culture. It is a critical part of the formula of being data-driven. To successfully scale analytics and become more data-driven, you need to build what is called a data culture, and what at Tableau we're calling a data culture. Transforming a culture is hard, and that's where leaders like you in this room need to step up. You need a strong vision and a dedication to lead your organization there, but you also need support in it. So today I'm going to share with you how Tableau is starting to think about data culture. I want you to feel a little provoked. Maybe you feel like the idea of data culture is an unattainable goal. Or maybe you're frustrated that you're not making enough progress. But these feelings, they can be useful because it's only when we're pushed out of our comfort zone that we can really, truly achieve great things. And the overwhelming sense I want you to have today is feeling supported. We are all in this room, in this together. We share many of the same goals and the same obstacles. And we can together lead our organizations through this cultural change. It starts by taking ideas and forums like this and then turning those into small steps, and they become bigger steps. And so as you listen today, I want you to think about where your organization is on your journey and how the people around you can help. This is a powerful room, and at Tableau, we want to start building a community of data leaders. And you will see more from us in the coming weeks and months on the topic of data culture and data leaders. And I hope that you choose to join that conversation so we can start creating a community together. So in all of our research, one of the things that was interesting to us is that no one has actually defined data culture. It's this nebulous thing that we all seem to, a term we seem to throw around, and we all seem to sort of know what it is. But we thought a good place to start would be defining it. So this is how we are choosing to define it. There's a couple of things that really pop out to me here. The term people, it's at the heart of any data culture. And the need to practice. You need to practice using data daily in your organization. And it's all in service of achieving the ultimate goal of better decision making, of finding insights and applying them to your business and improving your organizations. So as we were going through this process, we actually found it really helpful to think about this in terms of an iceberg model. That's because the transforming to a data culture is hard because cultural change is hard. And so changing people's established behaviors is super difficult. In fact, really it goes deeper than that because behaviors are the things above the water. They're the things that you can see. They're the things that we see manifesting themselves every day. But then under the water, under the surface, there are explicit things like policies and rewards. And these are sometimes easier to see. But as we go deeper, there are many things that are unwritten, and these are implicit values, things that are habits, things that are beliefs. And these are the things that are really hard to change. But these are the things that need to be established if you're going to have a data culture. Without changing those, we stay in a stuck mode of that's just how we do things around here. So as we talked to companies and as we looked at the research, it was really interesting how consistently 5 things showed up when we started digging into these explicit and implicit values. They may not have all used the same words or the same language, but there underneath, they were talking about the same things at heart. And so these are what we found. We found that organizations with strong data cultures do these 5 things. They foster trust, develop talent, seek commitment, support sharing, and changes mindset. We call these the elements of a data culture. And so we're going to dig deeper into them today. So the first thing is that data culture depends on trust. Trust is at the core. Leaders in a data culture believe that all of their people are smart and capable, and they encourage people to ask critical and curious questions of their business. In data cultures, it's believed that people can be trusted with the data they need to make decisions. And they want data in the hands of the people who know the business best, so they can find important insights and take actions. There's a concept that's critical to this idea of trust. It's getting the balance right between empowerment and control. Often, most organizations start from a place of control. Control is important. You need to protect the organizations and the customers and your employees. But too much control stifles creativity, and people will find ways to work around it. The classic example is exporting to Excel, emailing the results around, and then at that point, like, what is the whole point of governance? So, governance actually really needs to start from a place of empowerment. You need to draw people in so they want to use their system to get their work done, and because it helps them. And by virtue of their participation, you now have what you need to govern more effectively. On Tuesday, I heard the best analogy from the VP of Analytics at Nissan. And she equated governance to Autotopia at Disneyland. Anyone know that ride? A couple hands. Okay, so when you're 5 years old and you go to Disneyland, you wait in a really long line, and then you get to drive a car. It's like so awesome when you're 5. Anyone have kids here? Yeah. We took our kids to Disneyland a couple years ago, and they were so excited to drive the car. And what they didn't realize was underneath the car, on the ground, between the wheels, was a track. And so they could like turn a little bit to the right, and they could turn a little bit to the left, but there was no way they were going to drive off the road. And so when we talk about empowerment through governance, we're talking about putting that track underneath to allow people to go off to one side, explore, be creative, but also to come back and make sure they stay on the road and are safe. What we also found was interesting in our research study that we just ran, one of these big insights we found was the idea of accountability. So we learned that people feel personally accountable for the data they can access. On this visualization at the top, the first row represents organizations that are best in class with data visualization. And then as you move down, they're lagging behind their peers. What's really interesting is this first bar here. Organizations that are best in class with data culture, almost 95% of their employees said they felt accountable for their use of data. And so what we're seeing is this strong connection that as you build a data culture, people actually begin to feel more accountable for the use of data. And so we wanted to make sure that our research was practical and useful and not just a bunch of theory. So we identified the observable behaviors that would validate the presence of an element in an organization. Here are 4 behaviors we found to be specifically associated with the element of trust. And these aren't the only behaviors out there, but they're pretty good indicators about whether trust exists in your organization or not. So pulling out of these behaviors, one of those we talked about was data governance and putting clear expectations. But the one I want to draw your attention to is that second one, that teams encourage data access and transparency. It's the providing the widespread access to data that we're talking about. It's about trying to break down the silos in your organization and see that other people in the organization might value the data that you have. And there's a really great example of that. If you live in the European Union, you might be familiar with the organization FreeNow. And FreeNow is like the Uber, Lyft of the EU. And they have what their head of analytics calls a data playground. And I love this term. And I love the concept because a playground is a safe place for everyone to play with their data. It's, in contrast, not a data prison where focus is on control. They've improved their speed to insight without compromising consistency or quality of their analysis. And through this approach, they have expanded self-service analytics to over half of their workforce. But what I really appreciated in their story was that earlier this year, they merged with another organization and brought another 150 employees in. And within 5 weeks, all 150 employees had access to the data playground. The FreeNow also thinks about their people's skills around data. And that's because every job posting at FreeNow includes a tag. We're hiring and always looking for passionate engineers, data-driven analysts, and talented people. So it's a fundamental way that they are looking at how they bring people into their organization. In fact, all great data cultures have a very pronounced focus on people. Critical thinking and data literacy are important at every level. To build the right workforce of data-minded and data-capable people, it's important to have the right talent policies. This includes recruitment and training practices, and it also needs to play into performance management and rewards. It needs to be a fundamental consideration in organization design. Because the reality is we can't hire our way out of our data needs. If the amount of data were to expand by 10 or 100 times, we have the infrastructure to support that. But if the number of analysts we need to analyze our company's data were to increase by 10 or 100 times, we wouldn't be able to do that. We have a robust academic program here, over 1 million people, but that's still going to fall short of the organizations we need, or the number of people we need for our organizations. So the reality is that we need to help our existing employees transform. We need to do a better job of helping those employees recognize and address the gaps. In the survey that we just put out into the market, only 14% of respondents said that analytics training was mandatory for anyone in their organization, let alone everyone in their organization. We need to think of how you approach enablement today. Is it truly holistic? Does it address the needs of every unique role at every level in the organization? Can you think of a different way to incentivize people to take part? I was in Singapore earlier this year talking to a chief data officer at a company, and she said that she was having a hard time getting people to come to training. And so they created a program. They decided that they were going to do an intact training for their executive team. They invited all of their executives to a 2-day training on analytics. And then she cross-charged people if they didn't show up. She turned it on its head and made it mandatory to participate, set the expectation that participation was the norm. Instead of saying, oh, we're going to charge you to come, she flipped the barrier of resistance. And I thought that was a really, really great example. So I'm not going to pretend that getting people to embrace change is easy, but we have consistently found that there's a strong relationship between confidence on one side and willingness on the other. You can help people bridge this gap by offering the training and support they need to build higher levels of data literacy. But they also need to know what tools and data sources are available to them. I really love how Southwest Airlines has approached this. The number one hurdle they heard to their analytics program was, I don't need analytics to do my job. So Southwest made it fun. They created activities around Tour de France and baby names, and they even had reality TV data sets like from The Bachelor. People saw that working with data sets wasn't scary, and as their confidence level began to grow, they started trying it with data in their jobs. Southwest Airlines went from having 3 people using Tableau to 2,900 people across 36 different departments. And self-service analytics has been key to optimizing on-time performance for their nearly 4,000 daily flights. And they credit Tableau and their team's use of data as being a key part of turning around their on-time arrivals time. So Southwest excels at embedding analytics, or embedding data into every aspect of people's roles. And they've embraced these behaviors, especially encouraging and rewarding those who learn new skills. So how are you doing? Look at the second one. Do you require senior staff to do analytics training? Would you think about cross-charging someone for not showing up? When you're recruiting, are you seeking and probing for data skills? You know, most people in this room here are probably in teams doing data, but oftentimes we're asked to consult and provide a secondary opinion on someone from another department. Do you ask them about data skills? Does that factor into your recommendation to hire? In fact, I think we at Tableau can do better. As I was building this presentation, I thought about our own job descriptions. We actually have one line in every job description. Does anyone know what it is? Any ideas?
Other duties as assigned.
It very well might be. But we intentionally added one other. Likes to solve puzzles. That would be a good one.
Passionate about that.
What?
Passionate about that.
Passionate? Yeah, he's passionate about data. Anyone else? We say you are a recruiter. So shouldn't it be everyone is an aspiring data rock star? I mean, if we're not doing this, we can't expect you guys to do this. And so we want to lead the charge, and we're currently working with our HR team to have aspiring data rock star added to every one of our job descriptions. That brings us to our next element. Organizations with successful data cultures don't just play lip service to the importance of data and analytics. There is a deep commitment to realizing the value of data through actions, investments, and a willingness to change. Investments extend beyond technology to the people and processes that enable it. People at all levels of the organization, from the board to the front lines, feel accountable and demonstrate these commitments. The return on investments from analytics is certainly measured, but there is also a recognition of the value and importance of exploring unknown outcomes. Commitment starts at the top. There are many great examples of CEOs championing data culture. The Jaguar Land Rover's CEO, he insists that all executive reporting must be done in Tableau. And as a result, great care has been taken on the flow of data and analysis. Touchscreens have been added to their boardroom so people can interact with data right there in the meetings. And because of this investment in their data pipelines, more people in the business have been able to engage with the data that is influencing decisions at the top of their company. They now have more than 2,000 citizen analysts in their business, helping them make better decisions using data that flows all the way up to their CEO. The CEO of an aviation company in South Africa, Comair, he recorded a video for the start of every analytics training. And he personally thanked employees for engaging with data to achieve their strategic goals. The BI manager said, without CEO buy-in, driving a BI program is close to impossible. The CEO of Cargill was a guest judge in the internal viz contest. He actually wanted to participate in the contest, but they said that they didn't think that would be fair to everyone else. So he ended up being a judge. And that viz contest with him as the judge attracted 730 participants. And while maybe only one person won, the organization won, with 729 other people improving their data skills. What a great message to send that data and analytics are important. What we found is it's just not CEO sponsorship that's needed. What you need executive sponsors at 3 different areas of the organization. Of course, you need an analytics champion, which I hope everyone in the room is. I feel like you guys are all analytics champions, right? Yeah? Okay. And you are the ones who will help create and implement the vision for how to be data-driven in your organization, how to choose the right technologies, and how to integrate that with the business. One of the really interesting things that we saw in our survey was that there was a lot of variability in who owns this role in the organization. In our survey, CDO, Chief Data Officer, and sometimes Chief Digital Officer, they was most commonly indicated as the senior-most person in the organization responsible for data. But it only showed up 20% of the time. And after that, it was a very long tail of other people in the organization. I don't think we're at a place yet where there's a consistently identified person within an organization where this analytics champion lives. You also need a champion for technology, like a CIO or CTO, who establishes the right governance models, like we discussed before, and understands how to integrate with the other systems that your company has. And don't forget, you need a line of business sponsor, like a CFO or a CMO. They will help identify the best use cases to focus on and who can promote great outcomes for other leaders in other departments. So the story I like, moving ahead. Sorry, guys. There we go. The story I love is at Chipotle. Chipotle is an ideal example of commitment. The restaurant chain needed to scale modern BI to more than 2,400 locations worldwide to improve their operations. And to do this, Chipotle built a solid foundation for governance, putting standards in place for how dashboards would be developed and delivered. They really pride themselves on operational excellence, and this is where their dashboards started. They built a series of dashboards that looked at operational metrics for each one of the 2,400 stores. And then, once it was built, then they took it to the CEO and showed the CEO what was possible. To do this, they consolidated more than 100 data sources, and in doing so, they've saved over 10,000 hours each month in reporting. And once the CEO was bought in to using it, they were able to expand it into the rest of their business. They started from one use case, one really good use case, to drive the commitment within the line of business and within their executive team. So in organizations truly committed to becoming data-driven, executives lead by example. We've seen the impact in companies like JLR and Comair and Cargill and several others. They make using data a requirement and a priority for everyone. And data is used in every communication and in every meeting. Meetings start with data, and everyone is empowered to contribute fact-based insights and ideas. Decisions are made based on the data rather than intuition or rank, and everyone supports the process. So the fourth element is sharing. Most big organizational challenges we're solving aren't limited to a single team or a single line of business. Solutions require cross-team collaboration and access to data from multiple systems. And people are at their best when they're helping each other. This element is really all about sharing. People being united in a common purpose and mission to better the organization, supporting others in their growth and investing in each other's successes. We take a ton of inspiration in this area from the Tableau community. Organizations that we see doing data well are taking a lot of the things that you've experienced here at conference, things like Tableau Doctor, things like Iron Viz, and they've brought them back into their own organizations to create and foster a sense of community. So in today's community for data is over more than 1 million people strong. And so when you take like-minded people and you connect them and help and inspire each other, you create people who are passionate. I think one of the things we've seen in our own in the broader Tableau community is this willingness to pay it forward. Someone helps someone on a forums that leads to that person's success, then that person turns around and feels a duty to help the other people around them also succeed. And it is this snowballing effort that happens in an organization. And also, like the Tableau community, people are engaged because we have fun. Have you guys had fun at conference this week? Yeah? Wouldn't it be great to have more fun at work? Okay, so we encourage you and hope that you're inspired by this experience here to take it back to your own organizations and start creating internal communities. Charles Schwab, data for them is fundamental to enhancing the customer experience, driving operational leverage, and reducing risk. Schwab wanted a more supportive and nurturing environment for their people engaged with data. They've created an internal user group offering tips and support for one another. They have an internal data community page, and when someone asks a Tableau question, they immediately get more experienced people answering. They have Slack channels set up for each type of data, data-marketing, data IT, data-sales. And people are able to jump in throughout their day and help people find the data they need to answer their own questions. The spirit of sharing at Schwab has grown into a strong community of meetups and messaging groups and portals. And this community has also enabled them to scale analytics to over 16,000 employees, half of which use Tableau daily. And their analytics team says that this sharing and sense of community has been core to getting everyone using analytics. I heard this idea I really liked around sharing and community. Does anyone in their organizations use the term COE? Yeah? So E probably stands for excellence. How many excellence? Quite a few. How about enablement? Anyone in the room, C does not stand for center. We got a couple hands back there. So I heard an organization tell me that they call it a community of enablement. Community is essential because people can help each other, often much more and effectively than a central team or programs that's set up to support them. It would be easy to think that large global organizations like Schwab might struggle with getting their people to share, but no. Creating these communities that encourage sharing, people helping one another, and sharing data cross-functionally is all in service of supporting business goals. So how about these behaviors around sharing? Like if we look at this third one, leaders create time and space for people to participate in communities. Are you okay with your data scientists spending time helping other people? Are you okay with the experts on your team helping other departments? If you're not, you need to think about the impact that is having on stifling creating a data culture within your organization. It takes a mindset shift, and that's our last element. When you have the right leaders and people with a bond of trust, you get this great formula. Data and analytics really become a part of the mindset of the collective group, the garden we are all growing together. People prioritize insights based on data over intuition and rank, and there's an openness to be challenged based on data. Outcomes are valued over output, and people want to dig deeper to understand the drivers for results. All of this leads to exploration and innovation. Going back to Southwest Airlines, their mission is to have the highest quality of customer service. They see data as vital to that mission. It becomes a part of their mindset and what they are trying to approach. And at JLR, it wasn't just their commitment to use data in executive meetings that's been transformative. They see data as a way to achieve their core value of excellence, having the highest quality of cars and standards in the way they work. They have shifted their mindset, and they say, in the next decade, data engineering will be as important to them as product engineering. For these companies, understanding that data is key to achieving their mission and aligned with their values has helped drive a data culture. Often, I ask myself what we can do at Tableau to create a better data culture. It takes an ongoing dedication to seek out better ways to do things with data that keeps our mindset healthy and proactive. When every employee starts, whether an intern or an executive, they go to a 2-week boot camp where we train them on our Tableau products and data sources. In fact, we have so much access to data that every employee is considered an insider for stock trading purposes. And they're only allowed to trade in the small window on the New York Stock Exchange that our CEO is allowed to. We're growing our staff. We're adding data engineers and data scientists who then help each other in internal Tableau doctor sessions. We started out with one person answering questions. Her name's Erin, and she would get a flood of emails every day. Hey, can you help me with this? Hey, can you help me with that? And she had the brilliant idea of saying, hey, on Thursday afternoon, I'm going to be in a conference room, and you can come ask me your question then. What was so brilliant about the approach is people took the initiative to explore and find their own answer, but they knew they had the support if they couldn't find it. And then what happened in the conference room is as she was helping one person who was stuck on something really hard, someone else would walk in, and their question might be a little bit easier. And as Erin was working on the harder problem, the first person who was waiting for a solution would turn and help the next person. And this sense, over time, people actually loved helping each other, and they started volunteering for time in the conference rooms. We now have people in conference rooms in every one of our offices globally on Thursday afternoons that help people. And they do it in addition to their regular job because we recognize it as part of their contribution to the company. We can also do better. Parts of Tableau are super data-driven. Our sales team, they're awesome. But other parts, not so much. And one of those areas is actually marketing, where I'm at. And so in an effort to encourage more of our marketers to understand Tableau, as well as to use data to improve our business, we have challenged every marketer to pass the first level of Tableau's desktop certification exam. So far, we're at 25% of the marketing organization. We have room to grow. We want another 300 to go ahead and pass that test. But what we're hoping is that those 25% of people who have already done it will step up and help the others achieve it. And that's really the goal we're going into here at the end of the year, to try towards the end of the year of actually being at 50% once we're all sort of back home and done with conference. So these are the behaviors of mindset. When you sense a fundamental shift in how you and your people think, speak, and act around data, you're well on your way to achieving a data culture. People will feel more comfortable challenging ideas with data, and they'll seek out new and better ways to use it. They'll get excited when they see data turning into real results, like increased customer satisfaction, improved products, and better processes. And as they experience more positive outcomes, you'll see their enthusiasm for using data gain even more momentum. They'll actually proactively start applying change to the business. And once your people experience that mindset, because data is incredibly empowering, they will never want to go back to working without it. So here they are, the 5 elements that are vital to a data culture. By no means are they a linear to-do list. The elements are interconnected and often depend on each other. They represent deep foundational changes that need to happen at every level of your organization, and it takes effort and practice every day. I hope you find these elements useful as you advance your own thinking on what needs to happen in your organization. I specifically hope that the inclusion of the verifiable behaviors of each of the elements makes this practical and actionable. The goal of our research and really everything we do at Tableau is to help all of you. We build products to help you deliver governed self-service analytics to your entire organization. The Tableau community that we support and participate in can help inspire and enable your people. And the new Tableau Blueprint is a step-by-step guide to help you achieve analytics at any scale. Who here has been to a session on Blueprint? About half of you. Okay. So there was a fantastic session yesterday called a Tableau Blueprint, the Hammer and Nail Edition. One of the wonderful things at conference that you might not know is that every session is being recorded and will be, by Friday, uploaded to YouTube. So if you haven't yet, I would earmark as a favorite in your app that Hammer and Nail edition of Blueprint. Go ahead and watch that. It's led by a gentleman named Michael Cox. He's been at Tableau about 5 years now in our professional services team, and he's a principal in that team, so just about as senior as you can get. And he has a lot of great practical advice for building capability within your organization to ensure you're ready to be data-driven. And so if you're not familiar with Blueprint, I'll just give you a slight overview, which is it's the accumulation of our own experience, and it's the best practices we've learned from our most successful customers. It goes beyond technology and addresses people and process too. It includes guidance in areas we talked about today, like community and governance. And I hope that in the app, you'll go ahead and take a look for one of the Blueprint sessions. There are some really great ones tomorrow on community and on internal viz games. So I want to finish where we started. You are the leaders that need to enable the data-driven transformation in your organizations. You are the new generation that must make data an integral part of how your organization does things, and your organizations will thrive as a result. We leave this session and this conference with a new calling. You are all data leaders in a new data era. You are the builders of data culture. Data culture will be a theme from Tableau for the next year or two. You are going to hear more from us on this topic. It is an area that we are deeply committed to supporting you in growing and transforming. This research is the first part, making sure that we're rooted in things that really can be transformative for you and your organizations. Later in December or early January, you'll see the results of this survey with IDC. I hope you keep an eye out for them. And I also hope you visit a new website that we have on our main site, tableau.com/data culture. Every word you saw on the screen today is on this website. So all of the definitions, all of the behaviors are on the website. So you can copy and paste them and interact with them to your heart's desire. I also encourage you to come to our Data Leaders Meetup tomorrow. It's at 10:30 a.m. It's over at the Four Seasons, so you have to go through the lobby of the Mandalay Bay to get to the Four Seasons, but it's a beautiful room, so you should just come over for that reason. But we're going to be bringing leaders all together and talking more about these elements together and what's working well in other organizations. I'm also on the team that helps decide sessions for TC. And so I personally am going to plead with you, not just for this session, but for every session at TC, to go ahead and use that evaluation tab when you're on the session. Do you guys all know how to do that? Yeah? Okay, you're nodding your heads. We do use this data. We use this data to decide who to invite back to be speakers, who not to invite back to be speakers, what topics people were really passionate about, what we need more coverage on. So my hope for you today is that you've been provoked and inspired to explore this more over the next couple of days here at Tableau and in the coming weeks and months with us. Tableau has a great community. This is a powerful room, and I'm looking forward to hearing your feedback. We are going to take questions. I think we have about another 15 minutes. So if you have any questions, go ahead and raise your hand, and we'll have someone with a mic come around. Anyone have any questions? Well, maybe if no one quite has questions, I have some questions for you. So how many of you live in IT? Okay. And about how many of you live in the business? And somewhere else? Where are the somewhere else's? Strategy. Supporting the IT business is sort of in the middle. Audit? So finance? Or more like data auditing? Risk audit. Okay. Anyone? Library? Oh, that's awesome. How many have been using Tableau in their organizations less than a year? Quite a few. Who has Tableau Server? Okay, that's a good response. Who here personally uses Tableau Desktop? That's an even better response. If you don't use desktop today, I would highly encourage you to find a hands-on training here at conference or go watch our free videos. If you're a server admin, there's so much rich data that can be used in understanding your data culture. Who here is familiar with Tableau Catalog? Not that many. So Tableau Catalog was talked about in the keynote yesterday morning. The most amazing thing about Tableau Catalog is it allows you to understand who in your organization is using what data. It gives you visibility in understanding patterns about who is engaged in the same data. So you can create small communities. If you haven't looked at Tableau Catalog yet, I highly, highly recommend that you check it out. We put it out there as like a data steward tool, but I really think that at its heart, it is a tool for data leaders to understand who they need to enable, who's not using data, and how you can start building momentum of getting people to work together and share. So do check that out. Let's see, do I have any other questions? Who would say their organizations have a strong data culture? Like less than 8%? Who would say that they think they're ahead of their peers? Some more hands. Okay. Who would say that trust is actually an area that you feel is impeding your data culture? Oh, that's fascinating. How about talent? I think talent is really interesting because I think we have long given it to the COE, and when we give responsibility for talent and training to the COE, it doesn't get integrated where it needs to be successful. For me, that was actually one of the biggest takeaways from all of the conversations that we had. So I hope you take that back with you today, that HR can actually be a really great partner with you on this journey. How about commitment? Who feels like their executives really get what you're trying to do? Some hands. We have a customer advisory board. We ask them that question. These are organizations that have Tableau deployed to most, if not all, of their organization. And even in that group, we heard not the strongest understanding. Who here has line of business sponsors? Oh, that's interesting. Not that many. Line of business sponsors are critical because they help you find those use cases, and then they're the ones that go out and champion to someone else. It's actually why I'm at Tableau. I was a customer. Well, I wasn't yet a customer. I was working for Philips, an electronics company, and we were doing a data project. And there was another area of the organization. I was in sales, another area of the organization, service. They wanted to buy Tableau. They really felt strongly in Tableau. But they couldn't afford 8-core on their own. So they went around championing Tableau to other departments until they could find someone to share the cost with them. And they approached us, and my boss sent me to training. She said, will this work for us? They were presenting a much better economical situation for us if we could indeed use them. And I remember leaving that first day of training saying, this is something completely different. And it was only because the service team spoke up about the potential of how they could use Tableau and how they saw using Tableau that our sales team was able to use it. And I wouldn't be a part of the data family, Tableau data family, without that. So I would highly encourage you to start building those relationships with your line of business, understand what their strategic goals are, what they're trying to accomplish, and then position and help them achieve those goals. Let's see, we did commitment, sharing. Who has sharing within their organization? Sharing, what did you say? As a challenge? Okay, as a challenge? You got lots of hands? Yeah. Yeah, that pay it forward culture is hard. Do look at the Tableau conference experience as something to take inspiration from. There's a lot of really cool stuff here. And our last one is mindset. Who feels that the data is seen as integral to their organization's mission? That's actually more hands than I thought. It's really interesting. Does anyone have any questions? Anyone? What questions about the research, who we talked to, how we put this together? Do you want to hear more about that? In the survey itself, what we saw was we asked up front people to rank themselves on data culture, and then we took inspiration from this McKinsey survey, and we had them sort of verify if they had a data culture or not through questions about things happening in their organization. We saw a strong correlation with these behaviors or lack of these behaviors when we asked on those behaviors, but there wasn't a correlation when we asked on data culture itself. And so one of the interesting things we think is happening is that people are looking out at the horizon about what data culture is, and they see a hill in front of them, and they're like, we're only that far from the hill. But then when they climb up and they make progress and stand on top of the hill, they realize the horizon's really far away. And so these organizations that we thought had a strong data culture, organizations we talked to who are on our customer advisory board, for instance, when we asked them to rank themselves, they actually ranked themselves really low. And we were really surprised by that. So what we're seeing is organizations that actually don't have a strong data culture rank themselves high in data culture. When organizations have a strong data culture, they actually rank themselves really low because they see how much further they have to go. And that was really, really interesting for us.
What sort of representation from the public sector do you have?
From the public sector? We talked with several organizations. The USDA is one that's been very vocal with us. They've actually had a lot of success in the federal space. They're one that I can share with. We actually talked with organizations under NDAs. So I can't actually explicitly say who we spoke with beyond the USDA, which we have a different agreement with. That's because we wanted them to be open and transparent with us about what was going on in their organizations, and we felt like if there was a risk of us sharing their stories or where they were at, they might be uncomfortable and hold back from us. But we did talk with the federal sector. We actually, we talked in the federal sector, we talked in the military, we talked with some state and local as well. We did, I talked with a very large university in the Midwest on this, and we talked with a private university as well. Yes?
Which industry had the best data culture and which industry has the worst?
We see organizations in the tech, the question was which industries had stronger data cultures, who were sort of leading. Technology, definitely. Financial services, surprisingly, was far ahead. I think that's because they're more familiar with numbers. Numbers aren't as a scary thing in there. They were by far the two leading. Retail seems to be leading as well. We also asked by department. Marketing seems really strong. Sales seems really strong. Technology itself actually lags. So IT teams themselves are really sort of underserved in their data needs, and I think that was surprising to me. People who are sort of technologists at heart aren't. And when I thought about it, it was really interesting because I thought about it in terms of Tableau. So within Tableau, our Tableau deployment is run by our enterprise analytics team, which sits in IT. They sit in technical operations, and we treat Tableau just like we do any other enterprise application. And so you had this team of people that lived in IT, breathed IT, and yet at the end of the day, IT was actually the area of our organization that was using Tableau the least. And that's because the technology team didn't actually see using those resources within IT itself. And so we actually hosted a training specifically for our technology team. We had to end up hosting 3 more trainings because there was so much demand to use Tableau. And then this really interesting thing happened. People who owned applications that had data started thinking about how that data could be used for other areas of the business. So we use Cisco for our phone system. And so they started looking at Cisco data, and they actually were able to provide the data to our inside sales team to help them understand the metrics of how often phone calls were going answered, unanswered, what their return rates were, and our sales managers were actually able to use that data for coaching. And so it sort of broadened this perspective within Tableau itself of sort of how technology or IT data could be used, which I think was really fascinating. Question?
The companies use
Yeah.
Thanks. For companies that have a centralized analytics department versus a decentralized organization, have you noticed a difference in their data culture?
I think that what we see is that a sort of centralized area is sort of where you need to start, but it needs to be in service of moving to a distributed environment with your analytics. So you do have to have sort of this core competency that a centralized analytics team can provide, but then it's really about enabling people within the business to start picking up and using data. If you are sort of stay with this fully centralized mind approach, and not this approach that is fully centralized approach, meaning it's a centralized team that is doing analytics, then I think the organizations really struggle. The largest Tableau deployment, we spent a lot of time on site with them. And one of the things we saw was that they actually had people who volunteered out of their business. They built these data councils from people within the business to advise their data engineering teams. And it actually really sped up how quickly they were able to get usable data sources out. Or whenever there was a change of the business to actually get that data updated so it was relevant and reflective of the experience. And so we're seeing actually more and more roles, data stewards, these data council roles that are in the business. And I think historically those roles have just been within IT. Does that answer your question? Yeah. Okay.
This might actually be a good transition from her question. My team is actually the only team that has access to build things in Tableau right now. And we are not a big team, even though there's other teams throughout the organization that have to provide insights and analytics and put together things in PowerPoints. And so there is that opportunity, like you're talking about, to decentralize some of that. But one of the challenges, there's two really big challenges that I find. One is from the TS side, the compliance, the data steward, from that end of it. It's how do you manage that from a compliance standpoint? And then the other aspect is really just the team that has that central responsibility. There's always that I don't think insecurity is the right word, but just that value, like that personal value. They feel like, well, if we give it away, then am I going to have a job next year, right? So that's, and maybe it's not worded that way, but that's kind of people try to protect their value within the company. So I have a challenge to kind of get my team to not feel that way, but at the same time, figure out how to address some of the legitimate questions around the compliance from an enterprise standpoint. So do you have any suggestions in terms of resources or just best practices for other people who have had to overcome similar situations?
I would say that where we've really seen organizations be successful is they actually take a different approach, which is they say, how can we build something that can be used for 80% of the use cases, 80% of the people, and then they allow for people to modify that in standard ways that are repeatable for their own analysis. And so they use tools like, I'm being told that we're having to wrap up here, but I'll sort of finish the question. They allow for areas that allow for customization. They don't try to cover every use case. They say, where can we provide the biggest bang for our engineering buck? And then they allow people to independently serve off of those and modify them in new ways. There was a new feature announced today in Tableau Prep called reusable containers. I think that's the name that marketing is going with. It sounds lovely. But what it means is that if there is a standard set of processes that you use, maybe there's a standard set of process that data cleaning steps that you need to remove personal identifying information. Your team can define that flow, keep that flow on the server, and then someone can just pull down that portion. And then you have the confidence every time. You can actually go back and audit any data source that has a field in it that is customer birth date or social security number, and then verify that they are using that flow. So that's in data catalog that allows for you to audit it. The feature is actually within prep itself and prep conductor. So I think there's some ways that you can enable that within your business so that you can sort of put that tight boundary, but let them play inside. Okay, I'll stay up here if anyone else has questions. I'd love to chat with people. Hit me up on Twitter, send me a message in the app, leave a survey response. Love to hear people's thoughts on this.
Hi, everyone. I'm Kiana Corliss, Director of Corporate